Hi, friends. Welcome to a story about a millionaire who had everything and a broke student who had nothing but hope. They never expected their worlds to collide, or that love would find them in the most unexpected way. Make yourself comfortable, and let's begin. Eli Carter was running late. Again. His worn-out sneakers slapped the pavement as he dashed past the glossy windows of designer stores he could barely afford to look at. His backpack bounced awkwardly, papers sticking out at odd angles, a coffee in one hand and a half-broken umbrella in the other. Rain, naturally, because the universe had a sense of humor. He was a philosophy student, broke as ever, living in a shoebox apartment he shared with two guys named Rick, one of whom might have been a ferret in a past life. He tutored spoiled rich kids to survive, drank instant noodles for dinner, and could recite Aristotle from memory but didn't know how to fix a leaky faucet. And then, she happened. He collided with her outside a marble hotel entrance, a woman, older, elegant. Her sunglasses alone probably cost more than his tuition. But the strange part wasn't her wealth. It was her laugh when he apologized, soaked and clumsy. "Relax, darling," she said, voice smoky, amused. "I haven't been knocked into by a handsome student since the 70s. He blinked. She smiled. And that was how Eli Carter met Claudia Beaumont. 71 years old, three-time widow, self-made real estate mogul, and, allegedly, allergic to boring people. He had no idea his entire life was about to change. Claudia Beaumont didn't believe in fate. She believed in dividends, good posture, and the power of a well-placed eyebrow raise. But as she watched the dripping wet young man dash away in a flurry of papers and panic, something odd happened. She smiled. Genuinely. The kind that stretched all the way to the crow's feet. She refused to Botox. He was a disaster, and fascinating. Back inside the hotel lobby, all chandeliers and hush-toned jazz, her assistant, Margot, raised a perfectly sculpted brow. "You're smiling. Should I be worried?" "Possibly," Claudia replied, removing her sunglasses with a flair that would have made a Bond villain nervous. "I think I've just been flirted with by a philosophy major wearing ramen noodles for cologne." Margot snorted. "Was that enjoyable?" "Terribly." She sipped her espresso. "Find out who he is." Margot blinked. "You're joking." Claudia tilted her head. "Do I look like I joke?" Margot considered. "You look like a woman planning her next great mischief." "Exactly." That evening, Claudia sat on the balcony of her penthouse, barefoot, silk robe billowing in the breeze, a glass of something expensive in her hand. 3 husbands, 14 companies, 2 bestsellers, and yet she felt bored lately. Not lonely. She didn't do lonely, just unstimulated. And now, out of nowhere, a clumsy, half-soaked boy man had run into her like he was auditioning for a French farce, and she couldn't stop thinking about it, or him. Not in that way, though, well, she wasn't dead, but in a curious way. She'd built an empire. She'd buried 3 husbands, none suspicious, unfortunately. She was worth more than a mid-sized country and was frequently described by society pages as unapologetically brilliant. So what was one poor, chaotic student doing bouncing around her brain like a pinball? She didn't know. But she fully intended to find out. 3 days passed. Eli had mostly convinced himself that the woman from the hotel, the effortlessly glamorous one who'd smiled at him like he was charming and tragic, had already forgotten the entire encounter. He, on the other hand, had thought about it a lot. About her voice, her presence, the way she didn't flinch when he basically body-slammed her with coffee and wet Shakespeare notes, about how she called him handsome like it was a private joke between them. But that was it. A funny memory. An odd, surreal moment in an otherwise ramen-fueled week. So when he walked into his favorite used bookstore, the one 2 blocks from campus with the squeaky floorboards and smell of old paper, the last thing he expected was her. kneeling in the poetry section, in stilettos, reading Neruda. Eli froze mid-step. Claudia looked up, casually brushing a strand of silver-streaked hair behind her ear. "Oh," she said with a twinkle in her eye. "You again?" He blinked. "You read Neruda?" She stood, completely unbothered. "I also drink whiskey, own 3 black turtlenecks, and once kissed a Cuban saxophonist on a boat in Nice. Don't look so surprised." Eli opened his mouth, closed it. "This is my bookstore." "I gathered," she said, holding up a slim volume. "The shelves shake like a nervous butler. Very charming." He stepped closer, trying to seem cooler than he felt. "Did you follow me here?" Her smile deepened. "Wouldn't that be scandalous?" "That's not a no." She arched an eyebrow. "What do you think?" Eli tilted his head. "I think either you're stalking me, or this is the most stylish coincidence in the history of random Tuesday mornings." "Let's say it's serendipity," she said smoothly. "You're the one studying philosophy. Aren't you supposed to believe in that kind of nonsense?" He laughed, surprised by how easy it was with her. "I believe in free will, but I'm starting to reconsider." They stood like that for a moment, between Neruda and Nietzsche, 2 people who absolutely shouldn't have made sense. And yet, Claudia broke the silence first. "Coffee?" Eli hesitated. "As in, with you?" "As in," she said, stepping past him toward the door, "you owe me a new one, remember? I still smell like Starbucks regrets." He grinned. "Fair enough." As they walked out together, Claudia didn't look back. She didn't have to, because she'd already decided this game was on. And darling, she always played to win. The cafe was small, dimly lit, and smelled like cinnamon and existential dread, which was exactly Eli's kind of place. They sat at a corner table. He fidgeted with a sugar packet. She, of course, didn't touch hers. "So," Claudia said, resting her chin delicately on one hand, "tell me something tragic about your life." That's what young people do over coffee, isn't it? Eli blinked. "You want tragedy?" She smiled. "Or at least discomfort. It's the only way to get to the good stuff." He laughed nervously. "Well, I live with 2 roommates who think deodorant is a conspiracy." "That'll do for a start." He took a sip. "Why are you really here?" Claudia tilted her head. "You mean, why am I having coffee with a charmingly disheveled philosophy student instead of lunching with socialites who wear beige like a religion?" "That is oddly specific." She leaned in. "Because I'm bored, Mr. Carter, and you don't bore me." That should have felt like a compliment. Instead, it felt like a warning. "I'm not that interesting," he said. "Oh, darling," she said, stirring her untouched drink. "That's what makes you dangerous. You don't know how interesting you are." He stared at her, unsure whether she was flirting or philosophizing. Claudia sat back, surveying him like a curator, choosing whether to hang a painting or burn it for fun. "So, what's your dream?" Eli hesitated. "Honestly?" "Preferably to write," he said. "Essays, books, things no one reads." She raised an eyebrow. "So you're ambitious and underfunded." "You could say that." Claudia smiled. "Good. That means you're hungry." He laughed. "Is that a metaphor or a veiled offer of lunch?" She didn't answer, just stood and tossed a crisp bill on the table. "Walk me home." "That sounds dangerous." "Only if you say something boring." As they left the cafe, Eli had the strangest feeling, like he'd just stepped into a novel someone else was writing, and Claudia was holding the pen. He wasn't sure where the story was going, but he knew one thing for certain. He was already turning the page. 3 days later, Eli received an envelope. Not an email. Not a text. An envelope. It was cream-colored, sealed with real wax, and left at the front desk of the university's ancient philosophy department like it was 1894. Inside was a card, heavy paper, elegant font. Mr. Carter, your wit has been weighed. Your coffee debts remain outstanding. Let's correct both. Wednesday, 7 p.m., Beaumont Tower, Penthouse. CB. P.S. Bring a pen. You'll need it. He stared at the note like it might self-destruct. Rick number 2, the ferret-like roommate, leaned over his shoulder. You joining a cult? I just got a job. Beaumont Tower was the kind of place Eli had only seen in movies with jazz soundtracks and betrayal. The elevator had gold trim and whispered as it moved. The penthouse doors opened before he knocked. Claudia stood there in a floor-length silk robe, holding a clipboard and a glass of something that was absolutely not apple juice. "Welcome, intern," she said, without smiling. What? Come in. You're 20 minutes early. That's either desperation or good manners. I like both. He stepped inside. The place was ridiculous. Marble floors, abstract art, soft jazz floating from invisible speakers. A cat stared at him like it was judging his entire tax bracket. She led him to a study. On the desk, dozens of letters, old, handwritten, tied with ribbon. Next to them, a typewriter. "I'm digitizing my past," she said, "and I need fingers that haven't been ruined by diamonds and divorce." Eli blinked. "You want me to transcribe your letters?" She gave him a look. "Not mine. Love letters to me, some flattering, some desperate, a few borderline illegal." He coughed. "This is a real job?" She smirked. "It pays. And what exactly is the purpose of this project?" She leaned on the desk. "Let's call it archival mischief. I'm organizing a memoir, maybe, or blackmail, who knows?" He sat down slowly. "So I'm your love letter ghostwriter?" She handed him a martini. "Darling, you're my past's personal secretary, with benefits." He choked on the martini. "Medical benefits," she clarified innocently. "Dental even. I'm not a monster." As Eli stared at a letter dated 1983 signed by an Italian diplomat named Carlo who swore he'd fake his own death for her, he wondered, how had this become his life? But when he looked up and saw Claudia watching him over the rim of her glass, curious, amused, and maybe a little impressed, he thought he didn't want it to be anything else. Eli returned the next evening, and the evening after that. Soon it became routine. 7 p.m., sharp, martini, typewriter, jazz, judgmental cat, and a pile of handwritten confessions from men who had, apparently, once believed Claudia Beaumont was their last great love. Some letters were poetic. "If I were a cigarette, I'd want to burn in your hands." "Alexandra, Paris, 1997. Some were outright unhinged. "If you don't return my call, I'll move to the mountains and write tragic operas about your smile." Frank, somewhere in Idaho. Some, surprisingly, were heartbreakingly sincere. "I loved you quietly like a man pressing wildflowers into pages no one would open." William, New York, 1981. And the more Eli typed, the more curious he became. He started asking questions. "Did you ever love this one?" he asked one night, holding up a letter signed, "Raphael, poet, liar, vegan." Claudia was stretched out on a velvet chaise, filing her nails. "Briefly. He wore eyeliner better than I did. Tragic, really." "And this guy? Harold, the one with 17 footnotes?" She sighed. "Harold proposed to me in a planetarium. I declined because I was allergic to sentiment and overhead projectors at the time." Eli laughed, shaking his head. "You've lived 1,000 lives." She looked at him, not joking now. "And yet this is the first one that feels like the beginning." He glanced up. "What do you mean?" But she waved it off. "Nothing. Nostalgia makes me cryptic." One night, Eli arrived later than usual, soaked again, hair a mess, no umbrella this time. "You really do have a thing for dramatic entrances," Claudia said, handing him a towel. "Sorry," he muttered. "Class ran late." Then the subway died. Then I got yelled at by a man in a top hat and no pants. "Welcome to New York," she said, pouring him a drink. "Now, tonight's letter is from a man who once gifted me a stolen parrot." Eli blinked. "Please tell me this story ends in disaster." "Darling, it begins in disaster." Somewhere between the parrot and a breakup letter written in lipstick, Eli realized something. He liked being there. Not for the money, not even for the stories. He liked listening to her, watching her, seeing the flashes of softness under the silk and sarcasm. Claudia Beaumont was still a mystery, but now she was one he wanted to solve. And maybe, just maybe, she was letting him. This time, when Eli arrived, there was no music. That was strange. Usually her space was alive, jazz playing, glasses clinking, the cat lounging with disdain on a piano stool. But today, silence. And Claudia sat at the desk. Not lounging, not commanding. Sitting, holding just one letter. "Tonight," she said without looking up, "we don't type." Eli dropped his backpack, quietly sat across from her. "Everything okay?" "Not particularly." She handed him the letter. "This one's different." He took the yellowed envelope. No name, no stamp. Inside, one page handwritten in a familiar slanted script. Hers. "I never sent this, but I wrote it anyway. Maybe because I needed to say it, even if no one ever heard it. You hurt me. But I loved you. Not because you were perfect. You were anything but because I saw something in you that made me forget I'd ever been careful. And when you left, you didn't take your clothes, or your books, or even your watch. You took the version of me that believed people stay. I miss her." Eli read it in silence. When he looked up, Claudia was already watching him. Not like usual, not playfully, not testing him, just really watching. "Was it real?" he asked softly. "Very," she nodded. "And it ruined me for a while, but then I realized we're never ruined forever, just temporarily repurposed." He folded the letter gently. "Can I tell you something?" he asked. She nodded. "My dad left when I was 9, said he was going out for coffee. My mom still keeps the mug he drank from that morning. She's never moved it." Claudia didn't say anything. She just put down her glass and sat closer. "I still wonder, am I the one who leaves or the one left behind?" Her voice was nearly a whisper. "And what have you decided?" Eli gave a small, crooked smile. "Not sure yet, but with you, I think I want to stay." It wasn't a scene from a movie, no dramatic music, no slow pan, but in its quietness, it was real, and that made it matter even more. Eli should have known something was up when Claudia handed him a tux, wrapped, pressed, with his name embroidered in gold thread on the tag. "I can't afford this," he said, holding it like it might bite him. "You're not buying it," Claudia replied, sipping wine without looking up. "You're wearing it. Friday night. Don't be late." "Late for what?" "The Metropolitan Spring Gala. Black tie, champagne. Very judgmental art collectors." He blinked. "You want me to go with you?" Claudia finally looked at him. Calm, composed, and just the tiniest bit wicked. "No, darling, I want you to go as mine." Friday night hit like a film reel. Limousines, flashbulbs, a red carpet that smelled like anxiety and old money. Eli walked beside Claudia, stiff in the tux, heart pounding. She, of course, looked like a queen descended from champagne. People turned, whispered, cameras clicked. Someone asked, "Claudia, who's your charming companion?" She smiled. Not coyly, not vaguely. "My fiancé." Eli froze. He heard her say it. He watched jaws drop, and all he could think was, did she just... "Smile, darling," she murmured, without looking at him. "This is the fun part." They made it through dinner with only 3 gasps, 5 jealous glances, and 1 extremely confused senator. Eli leaned in at the table. You said job, not marriage plot. Claudia took a sip of wine, unfazed. I didn't say real marriage, just a little engagement. For the press. Helps with a charity deal I'm working on. Claudia, you're not under oath. And besides, she looked at him now, her voice lower. No one ever believes I do anything for love. Let them think it's strategy. Let them guess. Eli sat back, heart racing, mind spinning. He should have run, should have panicked. But he didn't. Instead, he smiled. You're completely insane. Took you long enough? That night, as they stood on the rooftop again, tux slightly unbuttoned, heels off, moon above Manhattan, Eli looked at her, really looked, and said, So, is any of this real? Claudia was quiet for a moment, then, I'm still deciding. He stepped closer. Let me know when you do. And she did something rare. She leaned into him, not with her body, with trust. It started with a headline. Beaumont's boy toy. Meet the mystery student behind the ring. Eli saw it on a stranger's phone in the subway. A grainy photo of him and Claudia from the gala. She, radiant. He, wide-eyed like a deer at a Cartier auction. That should have been funny. Instead, it burned. That night, he didn't go to Claudia's. He walked the city. No umbrella, of course. Thoughts chased him like traffic noise. Was he just another detail in her legend? Was this all performance or worse? Was he starting to want it to be real? He showed up late the next day, unshaven, soaked again. Claudia looked up from her velvet armchair. You're becoming alarmingly consistent with the tragic entrances. He dropped his bag, didn't smile. Who am I to you? That quieted the jazz. Claudia didn't blink. That's a vague question with dangerous expectations. I'm serious. He stepped forward. Is this just for fun? For distraction? For PR? She studied him. Slowly, calmly. Then, does it bother you if it is? Eli exhaled sharply. Yes, because I think I want it to be more. The words sat between them like a spark on silk. She rose from the chair, walked toward him, not smiling, not performing, just there. And she said softly, Then you're already in more trouble than you thought. He laughed, bitter, cracked. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Fall for someone who always has the upper hand. Claudia's gaze was unreadable. Maybe I'm tired of winning. He looked at her, really looked. Then prove it. She stepped closer, and for the first time her hand reached for his, not the other way around. And that touch said everything she couldn't yet voice. They didn't plan it. There was no fancy dress, no piano, no press, just a Tuesday, just her apartment, just quiet. Eli was sitting cross-legged on the couch, typing one of the letters. Something from 1994, some sad architect who promised to build her a house shaped like his heart. Claudia stood at the window, watching the rain. Again. He looked up, said softly, Can I ask you something and you promise not to turn it into a joke? She turned. I can promise to try. He hesitated. Do you ever get scared of being known? Claudia blinked, then walked toward him, slowly like through water. She sat beside him, close enough that their knees touched. Terrified, she whispered. All the time. Eli nodded. Same. Silence. Then her hand found his, not in performance, not in power, just in quiet. He leaned his head toward hers. She didn't move. Then, forehead to forehead, no rush, no show. Her voice was nearly inaudible. I don't sleep next to people. I don't share blankets. I don't trust snoring. And I definitely don't let anyone see me without mascara. Eli smiled gently. I'm a blanket hog. I quote philosophers in my sleep. And I don't own matching socks. Their eyes met. And just like that, the space between them dissolved. The kiss wasn't dramatic. No jazz crescendo, no spinning camera. It was slow and warm and real. When she pulled back, Claudia searched his face like she was afraid of what she might find. But all he said was, "I'm not here to win. I'm here to stay." And for once, truly, she believed him. Sunlight spilled across the hardwood floor in long, lazy stripes. For once there was no jazz, no clinking of glass, no phone buzzing, just breathing. Eli stirred first, not with a jolt, but with that slow, hazy stretch of someone who's been warm all night. Someone safe. Claudia was still asleep, facing him, one hand tucked under her cheek. No mascara, no silk, just her. More beautiful than he'd ever seen her. He didn't move, didn't want to break the spell. The city murmured outside, muffled cars, distant sirens, life returning to motion. But in that room, time slowed. He watched her, not out of lust or even awe, out of tenderness, because he knew what it meant for her to be here, to stay. Claudia blinked, slowly waking. Their eyes met. For a second, neither spoke. Then softly, without her usual polish, she said, "I don't make breakfast." Eli smiled. "Good. I burn toast." A pause. She added, "You snore. You talk in your sleep." Claudia raised an eyebrow. "What did I say?" "Something about hosting a dinner party for Oscar Wilde and slapping a countess." She chuckled, that low, warm sound that meant she wasn't performing. "Sounds like me." They lay there a moment longer. No need to define anything, no need to plan, just skin to skin, heart to heart. Real. They were laughing when it happened, in the elevator. Claudia barefoot, holding coffee mugs that didn't match, wearing one of Eli's oversized t-shirts like it was a designer piece. He was telling a terrible joke. She rolled her eyes, the kind of moment couples have when no one is watching, except someone was. The elevator pinged on the 18th floor. The doors opened, and there he stood. Gray suit, pocket square, razor-cut jawline. Henry Godwin, Claudia's ex-number 2 husband. Still handsome, still smug, still deeply allergic to the concept of moving on. He blinked once, took in the t-shirt, the mugs, the laugh on her lips that died the second she saw him. "Well," Henry said with that dry, condescending calm. "Didn't think you'd upgrade to college students?" Claudia's spine straightened. "Still wearing your own ego like a tailored suit, I see." Eli froze. This wasn't his arena. But Claudia didn't flinch. "This is Eli Carter. He can quote Kant and make me laugh, which is more than I can say for the last man who lived on this floor." Henry smiled thinly. "How long until he realizes what you are?" Eli stepped forward before he could stop himself. "She's brilliant, and sharp, and terrifying, and no one's fool, especially not mine." Henry raised an eyebrow. Claudia stared at Eli. Something unspoken passed between them. Henry stepped aside. "Enjoy the crash. It'll be spectacular." The doors closed. Silence. Claudia looked at him and said very quietly, "He's not wrong. I destroy things." Eli touched her hand. "Then maybe you finally met someone who's not made of glass." They didn't talk on the way back up. Eli could feel the shift, like something delicate had snapped, but the echo hadn't reached them yet. Inside the penthouse, Claudia poured herself a drink. She didn't offer him one. She didn't speak, just stared out the window at the city like it owed her an apology. Eli finally broke the silence. "You okay?" Claudia laughed, but it wasn't her usual laugh. It was brittle, cracked around the edges. "Am I okay?" she repeated, voice sharp. "I just ran into the man who once told me I was incapable of love unless it came with a contract. And then you—" She stopped herself. Eli stepped closer. "Then I what?" "You defended me." She said it like an accusation. "I did." "You shouldn't have." "Why not?" Because now I can't pretend this is a game anymore. Silence. Claudia turned to him, and for the first time, she didn't look powerful or perfect. She looked scared. I'm not used to people meaning it. Eli didn't try to touch her, didn't offer platitudes, just said, I know. She poured more whiskey, didn't drink it. I've burned down better men than you, she whispered. Not because I wanted to, because I didn't believe they'd stay once they saw behind the glass. He swallowed. What do you think I see? Claudia looked at him, and in a voice that barely belonged to the Claudia Beaumont of gala stages and million-dollar meetings, she said, I think you see me, and I don't know if I can survive that. Eli finally stepped close, took her trembling hand, held it. Then let's survive it together. The next morning, Claudia disappeared. Not physically, her phone worked, emails still arrived, the espresso machine still hissed like a diva. But she wasn't there. Not really. She dressed sharper than usual, answered questions before they were asked, booked meetings, took calls, talked strategy. Her empire was thriving, and Eli hadn't heard from her in 36 hours. At 9:07 p.m., he got a message. Dinner, my place. Bring something sweet or chaotic. When he arrived, she was in heels and a blazer, hair pulled back, posture perfect. A bottle of something expensive on the table. 2 glasses, classical music playing, but just loud enough to keep silence from settling. Eli held up a box of chocolate croissants and a bag of spicy chips. I couldn't decide if you meant sugar or chaos. She almost smiled. They ate, sort of, mostly pushed food around. She told him about a new deal, a condo project in Prague, a gallery asking for old photos, all surface, no soul. After an hour of light banter, Eli finally said, You're doing that thing again. Claudia raised a brow. Which thing? The one where you turn your heart into a press release. Silence. I get it, he continued gently. You're scared. That night with Henry, it cracked something. Claudia stood up, walked to the window, arms crossed. And cracks are how things fall apart, she said. Cracks, Eli said softly, are how light gets in. She closed her eyes. I don't do messy, Eli. I know. I don't need anyone. I know. But I want you, and I hate that I do. That stopped him cold. She turned. And if you hurt me? He stood, walked to her, cut her off with a whisper. I won't. She stared at him, this boy man who somehow wasn't afraid of her sharpest edges, and very, very quietly, she said, Then please stay. And so he did. Not as a guest, not as an employee, but as the one person she didn't have to impress anymore. It happened during brunch. Of course it did. They were seated in a quiet corner of a rooftop cafe. Claudia in oversized sunglasses and silk, Eli in his one good shirt, looking like he still couldn't quite believe this was his life. Then came the voice. I knew it. Eli Carter. He turned. The voice belonged to a woman, mid-20s, sharp bob, sharper eyes, a tote bag over one shoulder that read, Poetry is a weapon. Claudia tensed immediately, not visibly, but Eli felt it in her posture. Mel, he said, standing awkwardly. Wow, hi. Mel smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Didn't expect to see you here. Last time I checked, you couldn't afford subway fare. Claudia sipped her mimosa without blinking. We've upgraded. Mel turned to her. You must be the millionaire. I must be, Claudia replied, dry as champagne. And you are? His ex, the one who paid his rent for 3 months while he explored his existential purpose. Eli flinched. Mel, that's not fair. She raised a hand. Save it. Just thought you should know. When he gets tired of looking up at you, he'll start resenting how small he feels. She walked away before anyone could answer. Silence settled like ash. Eli looked down. I should have warned you, he said. Claudia was quiet. Then, did you use her? He hesitated. Yes, I did more silence. But not like that, he added quickly. I was lost. I didn't know who I was. She tried to fix me. I let her. Claudia finally looked at him. Do you want me to fix you? He met her gaze. No. I want you to love me broken. Because I already love you like that. That stopped her. Because deep down that was what scared her most. That someone might stay not despite her damage, but because of it. They walked back in silence. Not angry silence. Volcanic. Pressurized. One breath from detonation. Claudia poured herself a drink the second they stepped inside. Didn't ask if he wanted one. Didn't even look at him. Eli stayed by the door, backpack still on one shoulder, waiting. Finally, she said, That was humiliating. I know. She made me feel like some fool, some stupid woman buying affection. You're not. Don't tell me what I am. Her voice cracked through the room like lightning. Eli didn't flinch. Claudia stepped closer, her eyes flashing. I built this life, brick by brick, husband by husband, deal by deal. I buried shame and weakness and need so far under diamonds and sarcasm that even I forgot they existed. She paced, the storm building in her hands, her shoulders. And then you. Walk in with your crooked smile and your damn handwritten notes and your stupid honesty, and suddenly I'm feeling things like I'm 20 and delusional. He opened his mouth. No, she snapped. Let me finish. She stopped in front of him. Close. Too close. I don't trust love, I don't. I trust contracts. I trust exits. I trust being the one who leaves first. Silence. Eli looked at her, flushed, shaking, furious, and said calmly, Then why haven't you left yet? That stopped her, because she didn't know. Not really. Claudia sat down, not elegantly, not gracefully, just tired. I don't know how to be with someone who sees through me, she said softly. It's like standing naked in front of a mirror I didn't ask for. Eli stepped closer, knelt down, took her hand, and for the first time she didn't pull away. The air between them was thinner than usual. Not cold, just quiet. Eli sat on the couch, fingers tracing the rim of a chipped mug. Claudia was by the window again, always by the window, in a robe too elegant for the hour. Neither had spoken in 10 minutes, but not all silences are empty. Some are full, of questions, of hope, of breath that waits. Finally, Eli broke it, softly. I'm not going anywhere. Claudia didn't turn. I know, she said, then added, That's what terrifies me. He stood, crossed the room, no dramatic gestures, just quiet motion. He stood behind her, not touching, not pushing, just present. You don't have to fix it, he said. I know. You don't have to fix me. I'm trying not to. I don't want a perfect version of you. She turned. Then what do you want? He smiled. You, as is. Complicated, magnificent, occasionally terrifying. A pause. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. A real one. Not bitter, not tired, just hers. I've made peace deals in Monaco less complicated than this relationship, she said. Eli shrugged. I make a great cup of coffee. And you're stupidly sincere. And you need that. She blinked. Then, I do. He stepped forward, held out his hand, and instead of some sweeping embrace or dramatic kiss, she took it like a contract. But this time, one she wanted to sign with her heart. They had fallen into a rhythm, not perfect, not choreographed, just theirs. Mornings started late. Eli made coffee, strong, slightly burnt, but forgivable. Claudia pretended to hate it, then always drank 2 cups. He worked from the kitchen table, scribbling marginalia in library books, muttering things like, Sartre would have hated Twitter. She paced during calls, barefoot in a silk robe, negotiating multi-million-dollar contracts while stealing bites of his toast. They argued over the thermostat. She liked it cold. He liked to feel his toes. They bickered over laundry. mostly because she refused to believe socks could disappear on their own. He left sticky notes everywhere. The cat hates me. Please confirm. Bought milk. Forgot why. You look good in my t-shirt. Just saying. She never replied on paper. But once she taped a single word to his laptop. Stay. One evening, Claudia burned the pasta. Not a metaphor. Just fire. Eli opened the windows, fanned smoke with a book on Stoic philosophy. She cursed in French, then in Italian, then in silence. They ended up eating cereal on the floor, laughing like idiots. She looked at him, mouth full of cornflakes, and said, "This is hideous." "You mean perfect," he replied. And maybe it was. Not the kind of perfect you put in magazines, but the kind you wake up beside. It started with an envelope. Again. This one didn't have wax or poetry, just gold foil and a logo, the Latham Foundation Gala, an annual event, the kind where legacy families and high-profile donors rub elbows and exchange discreet judgments. Claudia had never missed it. Eli had never even heard of it. She placed the envelope on the table between them. "Want to play dress-up again?" she asked casually, stirring sugar into her tea. Eli raised an eyebrow. "Another gala? More champagne, small talk, mysterious seafood?" "This one's different." "How?" She hesitated. Then, "They're honoring me." Eli blinked. "As in, lifetime achievement?" "As in," she said, not looking up, "a room full of people who've whispered behind my back for 20 years will finally say something nice, into a microphone." Eli smiled. "You nervous?" Claudia gave him the look. He grinned. "Okay, stupid question." A pause. Then she said, quieter now, "They expect me to bring someone." Eli set down his mug. She added, without meeting his eyes, "They assume I'll bring a business partner, or an old friend, someone safe." "And what do you want to do?" She finally looked at him. "I want to bring you." It was simple, honest, and terrifying, because this wasn't about headlines or shock value. This was her saying, "Come with me where it matters, where it's real." Eli didn't smile, didn't tease. He just reached for her hand across the table and said, "Then let's be terrifying together." The Latham Foundation Gala was flawless. On the surface, strings played, diamonds sparkled, waiters floated like ghosts with trays of champagne. Claudia wore deep emerald silk and no apology. Eli stood beside her, in a tailored suit that still felt slightly borrowed, but somehow, tonight, it fit. The crowd buzzed around them, compliments with sharp edges, flashbulbs, familiar smiles worn like masks. The MC tapped the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome this year's Lifetime Achievement honoree, Claudia Beaumont." Applause. She stood, walked slowly to the stage, looked down at the room she'd once owned, shaped, and secretly feared. Eli watched, heart pounding. He could see it, her walls trembling but not falling. Then it happened. A murmur. A shift. One of the side doors opened. A man stepped in, not part of the staff, not press, older, sharp eyes, graying temples. He walked straight to the podium. Security was too stunned to stop him. He took the mic. "Excuse me, my name is Julian Hargrove, former legal counsel to Claudia Beaumont, and I have something to say." The room froze. Eli rose instinctively. Claudia didn't blink. Julian's voice was calm, too calm. "I've spent the last 3 years under a confidentiality clause. Tonight it expires, and I think it's time the public knew who Claudia Beaumont really is." Gasps. The mic buzzed. He continued, naming companies, deals, things that sounded cold and clean but hinted at dirt beneath the gloss. Nothing criminal. Not yet, but it was enough to shatter a reputation. Cameras clicked, voices rose. Eli pushed through the crowd toward her. Claudia hadn't moved. She stood still, composed, cracked wide open. Then she turned the mic off, turned to the crowd, and smiled. But not her usual smile, not polished, not staged, raw, real. I've made mistakes, built walls, told stories to survive in a room like this, but tonight I brought someone who knows all of me. Not the curated version, and he still showed up. She looked at Eli. I think that's worth more than 1,000 handshakes and a room full of people who only clap when you're not dangerous anymore. And then she stepped off the stage, took Eli's hand, and left. Just like that. Outside, the air was cold. Reporters yelled. Cameras flashed. Claudia leaned into him and whispered, "Well, there goes my legacy." Eli squeezed her hand. "Then let's build a better one." And for once, the world's noise couldn't touch them. 6 months later. The apartment was smaller now. Not a penthouse, not marble, but sunny. Lived in. Filled with plants that weren't dying, for once. Eli sat at the table barefoot, scribbling edits in the margins of a manuscript titled Sharp Edges, Love Stories That Shouldn't Have Worked. By Claudia Beaumont and occasionally interrupted by Eli Carter, Claudia was in the kitchen. She wore one of his flannel shirts and no makeup, humming something that didn't match the radio. A pie was burning in the oven. Neither of them cared. The cat still hated him, but slightly less now. He looked up when he heard her swear. "Again?" he said, standing. "The oven lied," she muttered, fanning smoke with a frying pan. He came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and kissed the back of her neck. She stilled, then relaxed into him, and said, not dramatically, not as a punchline, just as truth, "I've never been more loved in something this small." Eli smiled. "Love expands to fit the space." She turned to him. "No walls, no mask." "I'm still learning how to do this." He kissed her forehead. "So am I." They sat on the floor, eating ruined pie and drinking cheap wine from expensive glasses, and outside the window, the world moved on. But inside that room, two people who should never have worked did. The end. Thank you for sharing this journey with me. Claudia and Eli's story reminds us, real love isn't always smooth, neat, or expected. Sometimes it's messy, loud, fragile, resilient. Sometimes it's two broken people choosing to stay, even when it would be easier to leave. If this story touched you, leave a comment, a like, or share it with someone who still believes that love is a little chaos wrapped in hope. Until next time, take care of your heart. And remember, the best love stories are the ones we never planned. See you soon.